There comes a moment in every life where everything you've been through, everything you've struggled with, everything you've dreamed about, it all comes down to one decision, not a loud decision, not something the world sees, but something deep, internal, and undeniable. A line you draw for yourself where you say, this is it. No more backing down, no more stepping away, no more quitting. Because up until that point, let's be honest, you've been negotiating with your own potential. You've been giving yourself exits. You've been leaving doors open for escape. If it gets too hard, I'll stop. If it takes too long, I'll walk away. If I don't see results fast enough, I'll try something else. And every time you do that, you train yourself to break your own commitment. But the version of you that never quits, that version doesn't negotiate. That version makes a decision once and then lives by it. See, people think success is about motivation. They think it's about waking up feeling ready, feeling inspired, feeling powerful, but motivation fades. It comes and goes like the wind. The real power comes from a decision that doesn't change when your feelings do. You don't wait to feel ready. You decide and then you move. And when you truly decide, when you make that shift in your mind, something changes. The excuses that used to sound convincing, they start to sound weak. The obstacles that used to stop you, they become challenges you expect. You stop asking, can I do this? And you start saying, I'm doing this, no matter what. That's the difference. Because when quitting is still an option, your mind will always find a way to take it. It will look for comfort. It will look for shortcuts. It will look for reasons to stop. But when quitting is no longer on the table, your mind is forced to adapt. It's forced to grow. It's forced to find a way forward. You become resourceful. You become resilient. You become relentless. And understand this decision doesn't make things easier. Life doesn't suddenly clear a path for you. If anything, it might get harder. The pressure might increase. The challenges might come faster. But now you're different. Now you're not reacting to life, you're commanding your response to it. There's a quote that says, a man is what he decides to be. And that's the truth most people avoid. You're not stuck. You're not limited. You're not defined by your past. You are defined by your decisions, especially the ones you make when things get tough. So when you say, I'm done quitting, you're not just saying words. You're stepping into a new identity. You're becoming someone who finishes what they start, someone who doesn't fold under pressure, someone who keeps moving forward even when progress feels invisible. Because here's what most people don't realize. The moment you feel like quitting is usually the moment right before growth happens. It's the breaking point before the breakthrough. And if you walk away in that moment, you don't just lose the result, you lose the transformation. You lose the version of yourself that you were about to become. So the question isn't whether it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. The question is, what did you decide? Did you decide to keep going, or did you decide to give yourself another excuse? Because every day, in small ways, you're reinforcing that decision. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you're proving to yourself that you're serious. Every time you push through discomfort, you're building that identity. And over time, that identity becomes unshakable. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to have everything figured out. But if you can make one decision and stand by it no matter what, you will outlast the doubt, the fear, and the obstacles. And that's how you win. Not in one moment, not in one big leap, but in 1,000 small decisions where you refuse to quit. So right now, I want you to be honest with yourself, not with me, but with yourself. Where in your life have you been leaving the door open to quit? Where have you been giving yourself an out? Close that door. You're not always going to feel like doing what needs to be done. Let's get that clear right now. There will be mornings when your body feels heavy, when your mind starts negotiating, when every excuse sounds reasonable. You'll hear that voice say, not today, you deserve a break, you can start tomorrow. And the dangerous thing is it won't sound like weakness. It will sound like logic. But discipline doesn't listen to that voice. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't check your mood. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. Discipline shows up whether you're tired or energized, whether you're motivated or not. It moves even when every part of you wants to stay still. That's the separation. Because if you build your life on emotion, your results will always be unstable. One day you're inspired, the next day you're not. One day you push hard, the next day you disappear. That inconsistency, that's what keeps people stuck. Not lack of talent, not lack of opportunity, lack of control over their own actions. But when you shift into discipline, everything changes. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And you start saying, this is what I do. And that right there, that's power. Because now your progress is no longer tied to your emotions. It's tied to your standards. And standards don't change based on how you feel in the moment. Standards are fixed. They're solid. They're non-negotiable. Think about it like this: if you only showed up when you felt like it, how far would you really go? If every goal you have depends on your mood, then your mood becomes your master, and your mood will betray you. It will shift. It will weaken. It will try to pull you back into comfort. But discipline makes you the master. There's a quiet strength in doing what needs to be done when no one is watching. No applause, no recognition, no immediate reward. Just you, your commitment, and your decision to follow through. That's where real growth happens, in the unseen moments. And those moments add up. Every time you push through resistance, you're building something deeper than success. You're building self-respect. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted. That when you say you're going to do something, you do it. No excuses. No delays. And once you build that trust with yourself, something powerful happens. You stop doubting your own ability. You stop second-guessing your path. Because you know you've seen it, you follow through. That's what makes you dangerous in the best way. Not because you're the most talented, but because you're the most consistent. Not because you never struggle, but because you don't stop when you do. And understand, this discipline is not punishment. It's not about forcing yourself into misery. It's about alignment. It's about becoming the person you said you wanted to be. Because every time your actions don't match your goals, there's a gap, and that gap creates frustration, doubt, and confusion. Discipline closes that gap. It brings your actions in line with your vision. And once that alignment is there, progress becomes inevitable. You won't always see results immediately. Sometimes you'll wonder if it's even working. But discipline doesn't need immediate proof. It trusts the process. It knows that repetition creates results. It knows that small actions done daily turn into something unstoppable over time. So when the feeling fades in, it will, you don't stop. When it gets boring, and it will, you don't stop. When it gets hard, and it will, you don't stop. Because you've made a decision that your actions are not controlled by your emotions. They're controlled by your purpose. And purpose doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. Purpose stays. Purpose pushes. Purpose reminds you why you started in the first place. So the next time that voice tries to slow you down, tries to convince you to take the easy way out, I want you to recognize it for what it is: not truth, not logic, but resistance. And your job is simple: move anyway. Not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently, step by step, action by action, day by day. That's how discipline is built. And over time, you won't even recognize the person you used to be, the one who needed to feel ready, the one who waited for motivation, the one who stopped when it got uncomfortable. Because now you're someone who shows up regardless. Now you're someone who executes without hesitation. If you're ready to step into that level of discipline, then don't just agree with it, commit to it right now. Pain is the one thing most people spend their entire life trying to avoid. They run from it, they distract themselves from it, they numb it, they pretend it's not there. But let me tell you something that life makes very clear over time: pain is not optional. It is not something you can negotiate with. It's not something you can bypass. If you are alive, you will face it. The only choice you ever truly have is what you decide to do with it. And here's where everything splits into two directions. Most people see pain as a stop sign. Something is hurting, so they stop. Something is difficult, so they back away. Something feels heavy, so they convince themselves it's not worth it. But there's another type of person, the one who understands something deeper. That pain is not a stop sign. It's a teacher. It's not there to break you. It's there to build you. Think about it clearly. Every single moment in your life where you grew, where you became stronger, where you discovered something about yourself, you didn't grow in comfort. You grew in pressure. You grew in struggle. You grew in moments when things didn't go your way. That means pain is not the enemy. Avoiding it is. Because when you avoid pain, you avoid growth. And when you avoid growth, you stay exactly where you are. Now listen closely, pain has a purpose. It sharpens you, it humbles you, it exposes the parts of you that still need work. It shows you where you are weak, not to shame you, but to strengthen you. but only if you stay in it long enough to understand the lesson. Most people never get the lesson. They quit too early. They step out too soon. And then they wonder why nothing in their life changes. But life doesn't teach people who leave the classroom every time it gets difficult. Life teaches those who stay. There is something powerful that happens when you stop resisting pain and start studying it. You begin to notice patterns. You begin to see your own limits, and then you begin to push past them. What once felt impossible starts to feel manageable. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel familiar. And what once broke you starts to build you. That is transformation. But you have to stay in it, not comfortably, not easily, but consciously, because pain will test you in ways nothing else will. It will ask you, do you really want this? Not with words, but with pressure, with setbacks, with delays, with silence. And in those moments, your response defines everything. Do you fold or do you stand? Do you escape or do you endure? There's a difference between pain that destroys you and pain that develops you. The difference is not in the pain itself. The difference is in your relationship with it. If you resist it completely, it controls you. If you embrace it wisely, it shapes you. And let me be clear, embracing pain doesn't mean you enjoy it. It means you respect it. It means you understand that what you're going through is part of the process, not a punishment. It means you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this building in me? Because every struggle carries something inside it. Strength, patience, discipline, clarity, but you don't receive it while running. You only receive it while standing still and facing it. And yes, there will be moments where it feels too heavy. Moments where quitting feels like relief. But relief is temporary. Growth is permanent. And everything you want in your life is sitting on the other side of discomfort. So when pain shows up, don't panic. Don't run. Recognize it. Stand still. Breathe through it. Learn from it. Let it shape you instead of break you. Because the truth is, pain doesn't define you. Your response to it does. And every time you choose to stay instead of run, every time you choose to push instead of quit, every time you choose to learn instead of escape, you are becoming someone stronger than you were before. You are becoming someone who doesn't just survive life, but grows through it. That voice in your head, it never shows up as an enemy at first. It doesn't kick the door down and announce itself as doubt. It arrives quietly, softly, almost politely. It sounds reasonable. It sounds careful. It sounds like it's trying to protect you from disappointment. It says things like, maybe this isn't for you. It says, be realistic. It says, you've tried before, remember how that ended? And if you're not aware of what's happening in that moment, you start to believe it. Not all at once. Slowly, subtly. You begin to negotiate with it. You start adjusting your dreams to match your fear. You lower your expectations so you don't feel the pain of falling short. And without even realizing it, you begin to shrink your own life. But let me tell you something important. You are not hearing truth in those moments. You are hearing fear dressed up as logic. Doubt is not intelligence. Doubt is not wisdom. Doubt is repetition. It's the echo of every past failure, every past disappointment, every moment you didn't get what you wanted. And if you let it speak long enough, it will start sounding like your identity. But it is not your identity. It is noise. And the version of you that never quits, learns something critical. Noise does not deserve authority. You don't argue with it. You don't negotiate with it. You don't sit down and try to convince it to believe in you. Because doubt will always find another reason to question you. That's its job. Its only job is to interrupt movement. So what do you do instead? You answer it with action. Because doubt grows in silence, but it disappears in motion. The moment you start moving forward, really moving, even if it's imperfect, you begin to interrupt the pattern. You start proving, not to the world, but to yourself, that the voice is not in control. Think about it. Every major moment of growth in your life required you to move while uncertain. You didn't have full clarity. You didn't have guarantees. You didn't have perfect confidence. But you moved anyway. And every time you moved anyway, something inside you got stronger. That is how doubt loses power. Not through thinking. Through doing, because the more you act, the less space doubt has to exist. It cannot survive in a mind that is occupied with execution. It only grows in a mind that is standing still, rehearsing fear. And here is the deeper truth most people miss. Doubt doesn't want proof. It wants permission. The moment you start justifying it, you give it authority. You allow it to sit in the driver's seat of your decisions. And once it gets comfortable there, it doesn't just question your goals, it starts questioning you. But you were never meant to live under questioning. You were meant to live in direction. So when that voice shows up, you don't sit down with it. You don't ask it for advice. You don't let it rewrite your future. You acknowledge it for what it is, a momentary disturbance, and then you keep moving. Even if it's small movement, even if it's imperfect movement, even if it's uncomfortable movement. Because movement is the antidote. There will be days when doubt feels louder than everything else. Days when your progress feels invisible. Days when you wonder if any of it is working at all. And in those moments, the real test is not what you feel, it's what you choose to do while feeling it. Do you stop or do you continue? Do you listen to the doubt or do you override it? Because every time you override it, you weaken it. And every time you obey it, you strengthen it. That's the hidden battle most people never see. It's not success versus failure. It's not talent versus lack of talent. It's action versus hesitation. It's belief versus surrender. And the people who win that battle are not the ones who never hear doubt. They are the ones who refuse to follow it. So start treating doubt like background noise. It can exist, but it cannot lead. It can be present, but it cannot decide. Your life does not belong to the loudest thought in your mind. It belongs to the strongest decision you make. And that decision is simple. Move forward anyway. Even when you question it, even when you're unsure, even when nothing feels certain. Most people underestimate what consistency really is. They think it's about motivation. They think it's about big moments of effort, bursts of inspiration, days when everything feels aligned and powerful. But consistency is not built in those moments. Consistency is built in the quiet ones, the ordinary ones, the days where nothing feels exciting, nothing feels new, nothing feels rewarding, but you still show up anyway. That's where real power is born. Because let's be honest, anyone can show up when they feel like it. Anyone can work when they're motivated. Anyone can push hard when the energy is high. But that's not what separates people. What separates people is what they do when none of that is there. When there's no applause, no immediate reward, no visible progress, just you and the decision. And every time you choose to show up in those moments, you are doing something far more powerful than working. You are building identity. You are teaching yourself who you are, because identity is not created in one big moment. It is built in repetition. It's built in patterns. It's built in what you repeatedly do when nobody is watching. And here's something most people never realize: their life is simply a reflection of your patterns. If your pattern is starting and stopping, your life will reflect instability. If your pattern is avoiding discomfort, your life will reflect limitation. But if your pattern is showing up every single day, even in small ways, your life will reflect momentum. And momentum is something that changes everything. At first, consistency feels slow, almost invisible. You put in effort and it feels like nothing is changing. You work and the results seem far away. You try again and still no immediate reward. This is where most people make their mistake. They confuse slow progress with no progress. But consistency doesn't work on your timeline. It works on accumulation. Think of it like a weight being lifted over and over again. One lift doesn't change your life. 10 lifts don't change your life. But thousands of repetitions over time transform you completely. Not because of one moment, but because of every moment added together. That's how strength is built. That's how skill is built. That's how success is built. And the hardest part is not starting. Starting is easy. The hardest part is continuing when it feels repetitive, when it feels like you're not getting anywhere, when your mind starts asking, is this even working? Because that's the moment where most people break the chain. But consistency is not about excitement. It's about discipline and repetition. It's about doing the same important things even when they stop feeling new, especially when they stop feeling new. There's a strange truth in life: what feels boring is often what builds greatness. The fundamentals, the basics, the simple actions repeated again and again. And yet, people abandon those things because they are looking for something more dramatic, something faster, something easier. But there is no shortcut to becoming someone new. There is only repetition. And every day you repeat the right actions, you are shaping a version of yourself that becomes harder to recognize as the old you. Because consistency doesn't just give you results, it changes your identity. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who executes. You stop being someone who starts and become someone who finishes. You stop being someone who hopes and become someone who builds. And that shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly. One decision at a time, one day at a time, one refusal to quit at a time. And the world rarely sees it happening, but you feel it. You feel it when something that once felt hard becomes normal. You feel it when discipline becomes routine. You feel it when showing up stops being a decision and starts becoming who you are. That's the power of consistency. It turns effort into identity. So when you don't feel like doing it, that's the exact moment it matters most. When it feels repetitive, that's where growth is hiding. When it feels slow, that's where foundation is being built. Because you're not just working toward a result or becoming the kind of person who gets results. And that version of you is not created in inspiration. It is created in repetition. So keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep repeating what matters even when it feels small. Failure is the word most people are afraid to even say out loud. It carries weight, it carries memory, it carries disappointment. Because every person listening to this has felt it in some form. You tried something and it didn't work. You gave your best and it wasn't enough. You stepped forward with hope and you were met with resistance. And in that moment, something inside you changed. Not because you lost, but because you started to believe what the loss meant. And that's where the real danger begins. Because failure itself is not what stops people. It's the meaning they attach to it. One moment of setback becomes a story. That story becomes an identity. And suddenly it's no longer I failed at something. It becomes I am a failure. But that is not the truth. Failure is not a label. It is not a final judgment. It is not a definition of who you are. Failure is information. Nothing more, nothing less. It is feedback from reality saying try again, but differently. And if you understand that, then failure loses its power to define you. Think about it, every person you admire, every person who built something meaningful, every person who stood where others said was impossible, they all share something in common. They failed, not once, not twice, many times, but they didn't let failure become a stopping point. They let it become a stepping stone, because failure only becomes final when you stop. As long as you continue, it is just part of the process. But most people don't see it that way in the moment. In the moment of failure, emotions are loud, ego is wounded, confidence is shaken. And the natural reaction is to retreat, to protect yourself, to step away from anything that might hurt again. But here's the hidden truth. Retreat feels safe, but it slowly builds regret. And regret is heavier than failure ever was. So you have a choice in those moments. You can let failure close the door, or you can let it teach you how to open it differently. Because every failure is asking a question. Not are you good enough, but are you willing to learn? Are you willing to adjust? Are you willing to grow instead of quit? And growth only happens when ego steps aside and learning steps in. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop defending your failure and start studying it. Instead of saying, why did this happen to me? You start asking, what did I miss? Instead of blaming circumstances, you start analyzing your approach. Instead of walking away, you start refining your strategy. That is the difference between collapse and evolution. And understand this. Clearly, failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. It is built into the process. It is the system of correction that forces you to improve. But only if you stay in the game long enough to learn from it. Because the moment you quit, failure becomes permanent. Not because it defeated you, but because you stopped responding to it. And that is where people get trapped, not in failure itself, but in the decision to stop after it. But the version of you that never quit sees failure differently. That version doesn't panic when things go wrong. It pauses, it reflects, it adjusts, and it moves again. Not with the same mistake, but with new understanding. That's how strength is built. Not by avoiding failure, but by surviving it repeatedly and still choosing to move forward. And something interesting happens when you develop that mindset. Failure starts to lose its emotional grip. It stops feeling like identity damage and starts feeling like progress data. You stop asking, what does this say about me? And start asking, what does this teach me? And that shift changes everything. Because once failure no longer scares you, you become willing to attempt more. You take more risks. You try more paths. You step into more opportunities. And ironically, the more you are willing to fail, the closer you get to success. Not because failure disappears, but because you no longer fear it. So don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Don't let it convince you to stop. Let it sharpen you. Let it refine you. Let it guide you forward instead of pulling you back. Because the truth is, simple failure will either break you or build you. But it will not define you unless you let it. And right now, in this moment, you get to decide what role it plays in your life. So if you've fallen, stand back up. If you've been knocked down, reevaluate and move again. If you've made mistakes, learn from them and continue forward. Because the only real failure is the one you refuse to rise from. And if you rise, even after falling, you are not defeated, you are becoming.